You know what's crazier than Rick's inventions? His dating history. We're talking about a guy who's hooked up with a literal planet, dated a hive mind that controls thousands of people, and somehow still managed to fumble every single relationship. Today, I'm ranking all of Rick Sanchez's love interests from S tier all the way down to F tier, starting with Kiara. Now, here's the thing about Kiara. She's technically a Rick love interest, but we never actually see them together. Kiara shows up in the ABCs of Beth as Jerry's rebound girlfriend. Yeah, Jerry's girlfriend, not Rick's. She's this warrior priestess from Crudablon who Jerry meets on some intergalactic dating app that Rick sets up for him. They do the whole soul bonding thing, which apparently gives Jerry telekinetic powers. But things go south when Jerry convinces her that Morty and Summer are threats. She literally tries to hunt his own kids. Classic Jerry move, honestly. Eventually, Jerry breaks up with her to save his children, thinking he used her as a rebound. Plot twist, she was using him as a rebound too. But here's where Rick comes in. In the post-credit scene, we hear a series of voicemails on Jerry's answering machine. Jerry's still sending, let's say, inappropriate photos to Kiara.
Hey Jerry, it's Kiara. Listen, my boyfriend saw those texts you've been sending me and he got pretty pissed off. If he calls you, just ignore him.
Her new boyfriend, some alien named Carmax, leaves a threatening message.
This is Carmax. I have intercepted sexual communications between you and my new girlfriend Kiara. I am coming to kill you now!
Then Rick leaves a message saying he already killed that guy.
Yo, Jerry, it's the Big R. I killed that alien that was coming after you. Looking out for you, buddy.
And immediately after, Rick leaves another voicemail, casually mentioning he hooked up with Kiara while she's right next to him.
Hey, Jerry, it's Rick. Don't be mad. I f***ed your ex-girlfriend, Kiara.
Who are you talking to, Rick?
Doesn't matter.
So Rick's entire relationship with Kiara consists of killing her boyfriend and then sleeping with her off screen. Well, that's it. No emotional depth, no screen time. Just Rick doing Rick things on a Friday night, if you know what I mean. So yeah, this puts Kiara in F tier, absolutely. But moving on to our next love interest of Rick's is Unity. Honestly, this is one of the relationships where Rick actually felt human. Unity is a hive mind that can assimilate entire civilizations, and also Rick's ex. Unity first appears in autoerotic assimilation when Rick, Morty, and Summer are cruising through space, jamming to music, and picking up a distress signal from an alien starship. Rick boards it thinking he can loot the place, but instead finds surviving crew members who explain their planet's been taken over by an assimilating hive mind. Then that hive mind attacks and takes over the rest of the crew right in front of them, and then it stops. Well, why did the hive mind not attack the three of them, you may ask? Well, the hive mind recognizes Rick. Awkwardly, Rick admits he and this entity, Unity, used to date, and after this, they head to Unity's planet. And Unity explains how she's taken over the entire population, unifying the world, and genuinely improving everyone's quality of life. The catch? No free will, no individuality. Summer immediately protests this, trying to free people, but Unity literally controls everyone, so that goes nowhere. Meanwhile, Rick and Unity waste zero time getting back together. They party like college frats, do absolutely wild stunts, and things escalate quickly.
You see that town across the river? Watch this.
Whoa! Whoa! That's not what I meant!
A neighboring hive mind called Beta 7 shows up on a trading mission and awkwardly tries to flirt with Unity, but Rick just mocks the guy.
You know, I think Beta 7 over there is hoping your alliance can be more than practical.
After Beta 7 leaves, Rick notices the materials he brought can be mixed into specifically fractal dust, which is apparently very powerful, and that's when things really go off the rails. Rick and Unity start partying so hard that Unity begins losing control of the planet. The citizens start regaining their free will, and what's the first thing they do? Immediately start a race war.
And I'll be damned if that ripple nipple bitch's race is superior. The cone nipple people will rule this world!
Morty and Summer nearly get caught in the chaos before Unity-controlled SWAT team rescues them. They notice Unity is clearly intoxicated and realize Rick's influence is literally breaking Unity's ability to function. Summer and Morty try to convince Rick to leave, telling him he has an unhealthy impact on Unity. Rick dismisses them, opens a portal to send them home, and keeps partying, but Summer's words land with Unity. She knows this relationship is disruptive. Later, when Rick steps away to use the bathroom, he comes back to find everyone gone. The entire planet is empty, and everywhere he looks, there are breakup letters. On walls, on buildings, on every surface. Unity pours her heart out.
But I know how it goes with us. I lose who I am and become part of you. Because in a strange way, you're better at what I do without even trying. Yours. And nobody else's. Unity.
This is probably the most heartbreaking scene of the entire series. Rick returns home, and for once, he doesn't have a snarky comeback. He just retreats to the garage, alone and broken. He assembles a death ray and freezes some deformed creature he'd been storing, and lovingly comforts it before vaporizing it to death. I thought that was a cute moment for once, but this is a Rick and Morty show. Then he points the machine at himself. He's literally about to commit suicide. The only reason he survives is because he passes out before the laser fully charges. The episode ends with Rick unconscious at his workstation while Jerry cheerfully whacks weeds in the driveway. The contrast is brutal, but the story doesn't end there. In Air Force One, we see Unity still cares deeply about Rick despite everything. She tries calling him multiple times to check on him, especially after hearing he's hunting for him again, likely referring to Rick Prime. When Rick keeps ignoring them, Unity takes the extreme step of assimilating the entire state of Virginia just to get his attention. President Curtis and Dr. Wong investigate, and Rick admits he and Unity had an agreement that Unity wouldn't take over Earth. They secure Virginia with a dome, and Unity arrives in her space vessel to talk. Rick and Unity argue again, as Unity points out she's leaving even though her hive mind isn't properly released yet. After President Curtis accidentally takes over the hive mind himself, Rick and Dr. Wong meet Unity on her ship to get help. Another argument starts, and Dr. Wong sides with Unity, pointing out Rick ignored all her voicemails and that Rick is slowly changing. Unity agrees to help by reconnecting everyone properly, and at the end, Unity releases everyone from the hive mind on Earth, but tells Rick she doesn't trust him anymore. Rick ruined his chance to reconcile. She still cares, but she can't keep getting hurt. This is the only relationship where Rick's vulnerability is completely painfully exposed. He genuinely loved Unity, loved her enough to nearly end his own life when she left. They were perfect for each other in the worst possible way. Both chaotic, both powerful, both capable of reshaping entire worlds. But together, they destroy each other. And for this relationship is easily A tier. Easily Rick's deepest, most emotionally real relationship. Moving on, we have Deafne. Deafne shows up in season 5's A Rick Convenient More, where Rick and Summer are doing their whole apocalypse party tour, basically visiting planets right before they get destroyed to party like there's no tomorrow, because well, there literally isn't one for those planets. Rick meets Deafne on the planet Morglutz and immediately breaks his own rule about not getting attached to anyone on a doomed planet. He brings her along to the next apocalypse party, making her the awkward third wheel to Rick and Summer's grandfather-granddaughter bonding time. Summer is not thrilled about this development. As they travel from planet to planet, hitting up Slartivart and then Furcus 9, Deafne and Rick are just going at it constantly. Summer's trying to ignore them, having in the back of the car, which is uncomfortable for everyone involved. During a break, Deafne reveals to Summer why Rick is so attracted to her.
Yeah, that's right, girlfriend. This is what you're up against. Wars were fought over these. They've ruined kings, inspired presidents. 100 songs and 9 national anthems have been written about them.
Yeah, elbow breasts. That's Rick's weakness, apparently. Summer keeps insisting that Deafne is obviously just using Rick for survival, but Rick's in denial. He's convinced this is real, so Summer decides to prove her point in the most direct way possible. She takes the ship, flies up to the asteroid about to destroy Furcus 9, and blows it up. Planet safe. She comes back down and asks Deafne the big question. Now that they're not in danger anymore, will she stay with Rick? Deafne's response,
Oh, you cold Hello?
Goodbye.
Rick is genuinely shocked, which would almost be sad if it wasn't so predictable. Deafne is straight up the most manipulative person on the list. She used Rick purely for her own survival, had zero genuine feelings for him, and dropped him the second she didn't need him anymore. And because of this, we're going to be putting her in F tier. The only thing she contributed to Rick's life was proving that even he can't resist the temptation of elbow breasts. But nonetheless, she might be the worst one in this list. And continuing next, we have Gaia. And honestly, this might be the weirdest one on the list, which is saying something. This whole situation kicks off in season 4's Children of Morty, when the Smith family is heading out on a camping trip. Jerry's trying to get everyone excited about the great outdoors, but Morty and Summer are glued to their devices. Then Rick gets a text from an ex telling him she's pregnant and he's the father. Beth immediately sees an opportunity here. She's determined that Rick will do for this new child what he never did for her, actually be present and be a good dad. So she forces Rick to go meet this ex and take responsibility. The family assumes it's some some alien woman they're about to meet. Well, they are very, very wrong. Rick's ex is Gaia, a literal planet. Not a person from a planet, the planet itself. She's green and reddish, looks like a normal planet from space, but her surface is similar to Earth, with breathable atmosphere and familiar terrain, and she communicates through earthquakes that Rick can somehow translate. Gaia is about to give birth to her first sentient species, and Beth is absolutely determined that Rick will help raise these kids properly. Rick, probably seeing no easy way out of this, agrees. So Rick and Beth actually get to work developing this new society together, creating infrastructure, helping them advance technologically, and eventually getting them to a point where they can fly into space. And here's the surprising part. They're actually doing pretty well. Rick and Beth are co-parenting an entire civilization, and for once, Rick seems somewhat invested. It's weirdly wholesome, watching them work together to nurture this new species. Beth's getting the father-daughter bonding she always wanted, just with the added responsibility of raising sentient life forms. For a brief moment, it looks like this might actually work out. Meanwhile, Jerry's off having his own adventure after Summer verbally destroys him for trying to force family bonding.
Because if you move the bar so low, you might actually seem like you're worth a
I'm gonna go take a walk.
He wanders off and accidentally becomes the leader of the society's reject, the less advanced members that Rick and Beth's civilization cast aside. With their simpler brains, they love Jerry's camping ideas, so he becomes their leader and starts his own tribal civilization. Then everything goes sideways. A Zeus-like god named Reggie shows up, claiming he's actually the father of Gaia's children. And Gaia, in a moment of uncomfortable honesty, admits she made a mistake. She doesn't actually know who the father is. She had relationships with both Rick and Reggie, and now there's a legitimate paternity dispute over an entire species. Rick and Reggie immediately gets into a massive destructive fight because neither one of them is willing to back down. While this is happening, Jerry's tribal Ricklets and Beth's advanced Ricklets go to war with each other. The entire planet descends into chaos. The brawl between Rick and Reggie is brutal and lasts a long time. Eventually, Reggie gets the upper hand and reveals his true intentions. He doesn't even want to raise these kids. He just wants to strike the fear of God into them because, as far as he's concerned, he is God, and they should worship him. Right as Reggie's about to kill Rick, Morty and Summer, who found the crashed spaceship and are now both high off brake fluid, accidentally pilot the ship straight through Reggie's brain, killing him instantly. Reggie's massive body falls onto the planet, crushing the city and killing a huge portion of the newly developed civilization. Gaia is absolutely furious that her mate has been killed. She responds by forming an erupting volcano, and the resulting lava flow wipes out most of the remaining survivors. Everything Rick and Beth built together is destroyed in minutes. Rick, Morty, and Summer grab Beth, Jerry, and the last few surviving Ricklets and get out of there. The dream of a functional family unit is obliterated. But here's the interesting part about this relationship. There was actually something real here. Gaia genuinely cared about Rick. She wanted him to be present in their children's lives. She had emotional attachment to him, even if Rick didn't fully reciprocate those feelings. And unlike his other flings, Rick actually put in effort. He and Beth worked together for what seemed like days or weeks, developing an entire civilization from the ground up. That's more commitment and genuine effort than Rick gives to almost anything. But Rick can't maintain this level of commitment because literally in the post-credit scene, Rick is already back online browsing what looks like a dating website for planets.
Get the idea. I was watching over your shoulder for a full minute.
So I was watching because it's funny. They're planets, but they're sexy. It's a comedic premise.
He's already moved on, already looking for next planetary conquest. So we're going to be putting Gaia in B tier because this had genuine emotional stakes and real effort from Rick. Continuing this list, we have Bagan, a relationship that's mostly played for comedy with very little emotional depth. First shows up in Rick's life through his connection to Bird Person and the Defiance. She's a fellow resistance fighter who appears in several episodes, including Returnal Friendshine of the Spotless Mort, where she's seen fighting alongside Rick and Bird Person in the Battle of Blood Ridge against the Galactic Federation. She also appears at various Defiance meetings and is clearly part of Rick's extended social circle. In Valoric, after Rick and Space Beth defeat Phantopolis and stop his plan to transform Grumflemites into Ultramflemites, Bagan attends their medal ceremony. During the ceremony, she expresses clear interest in Rick.
Rick, pretty cool to see you working with your daughter. Pretty hot.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Although Space Beth immediately tells him not to hook up with Bagan.
Please don't
my coworkers.
Hey, you called me.
Which is solid advice that Rick obviously ignores. By the time we get to Hot Rick, it's revealed that Rick and Bagan have been dating for a few months. Bagan wants Rick to attend her family's Coliseum tournament on her home planet, which is apparently a big deal in her culture. Rick is super reluctant about this, and both he and Bagan think his memories of Diane are holding him back from committing. So Rick does what Rick does. He uses a machine to transfer all his memories of Diane out of his mind and into a giant artificially grown brain. At the tournament, Rick meets Bagan's family and casually mentions to her parents that he and Bagan have been hooking up for the past few months. Turns out, this is a massive violation of their culture's mating rituals. Bagan's parents immediately sends Rick into a mandatory duel with Jack Poo, Bagan's ex-boyfriend from high school. Bagan is furious with Rick, and rightfully so. She calls him out for not bothering to do any research on her culture during the entire time they've been together, and she has a point. They've been dating for months. This tournament was clearly important to her, and Rick couldn't be bothered to learn the basics of her cultural customs. Rick fights Jack Poo for a while in the Coliseum, but then just abandons the battle. He portals back to the Smith residence and puts memory Diane back into his mind, because apparently he'd rather deal with his trauma than commit to this relationship. After Rick helps memory Rick and memory Diane stay together in their own memory simulation and ejects them into space, he checks his phone. Bagan hasn't responded to his text. The relationship is over. Because of this, we're going to be putting her in D tier, because this was never really a serious relationship. Rick wasn't emotionally invested. There was no real connection. Just Rick trying to distract himself from his memories of Diane by hooking up with someone from his Defiance days. And moving on, we have Princess Piata, a centaur princess, and another one of Rick's flings that's basically just played for laughs. Piata shows up in season 5 episode Rick Dependent Spray, which by the way is one of the most absurd episodes in the whole show. And the whole mess starts when Morty sneaks use of a horse breeding mount at Beth's workplace to, well, pleasure himself.
Morty, you dirty little doggy.
A week later, Rick borrows what he thinks is a barrel of horse semen from the hospital to create a bioweapon for fighting the Chuds, an underground race of cannibalistic horse-human hybrids that he and Morty have been battling. Then a power surge causes the barrel to explode, and Morty's sperm mutates into giant floating monsters with teeth. Rick blames himself for bringing in a bad sample, while Morty stays silent out of guilt. The situation escalates fast. The president gets involved. There's a whole plan to lure the sperm to the Grand Canyon. Nukes are deployed, but that's a whole other story. In the middle of the chaos, Rick and Morty gets captured by the Chuds. The episode reveals that humans have been in war with these horse-human hybrids for centuries, and Rick and Morty are brought before the Chud King for execution. The reason? Rick slept with the king's daughter, Princess Piata. The Chud King is furious and plans to kill and eat them both as punishment for Rick having relations with his daughter. Right before the execution can happen, Piata intervenes with a major revelation. She's in love with Rick, and she's pregnant with his child. Instead of being angry, he's suddenly thrilled, because this means he'll have an heir on the throne. He immediately sets Rick and Morty free, and even sends his Chud armies to help fight the sperm monsters in Las Vegas. Later in the episode, after the giant incest baby situation is dealt with and launched into space, Piata gives birth to a foal that clearly resembles Rick. It's got his blue hair and shares his facial characteristics. It's half human, half Chud, and 100% Rick's kid. But here's where it gets even weirder. Piata casually explains the Chud foals are ready to go right out of the box. The baby immediately drills into the earth and disappears underground. Piata follows it, and that's the end of their relationship. Rick doesn't have to do any parenting.
That was easy.
This lands solidly in D tier, because there's absolutely zero emotional depth here. It's purely a comedic plot device in an already absurd episode. Rick had a fling with a centaur princess at some point off screen. She happened to get pregnant, and their kid immediately left the moment it was born. There's no connection between Rick and Piata, no real relationship development, and barely any meaningful interaction. The only reason this is an F tier is because Piata actually seemed to genuinely care about Rick. She saved his life and stood up to her father for him. And finally, our final one, Diane Sanchez, Rick's wife, Beth's mother, and the woman whose death defined everything Rick became. Diane isn't like the others on the list. She's not really a love interest in the traditional sense, because we never actually see Rick and Diane actually together in the present timeline. She's been dead for decades. She's the most important relationship Rick ever had, and her loss is the foundation of his entire character. For the first few seasons of Rick and Morty, Diane was a mystery. In the Rick Shank redemption, we see a backstory where Rick loses loses his wife and daughter to a bomb, but Rick himself claims it's completely fabricated, just a fake memory to trick the Galactic Federation. The show keeps the ambiguous for years. Mr. Nimbus mentions knowing about Diane, but Rick cuts him off before he can establish a canonical backstory. Rick actively avoids talking about her to Morty and the audience. Then Rick Marajak drops the truth bomb. The backstory was real. Diane Sanchez of Dimension C-137 was Rick's wife, and she had a happy marriage with him. In the few glimpses we see of her, she radiates the kind of normalcy and love that Rick no longer believes he deserves. Here's what happened. Another Rick, who we later learn is Rick Prime, offered Rick C-137 the portal gun technology and the chance to explore infinite universes. Well, our Rick turned him down. He was happy with his life. He had Diane, had Beth, and he didn't need anything else. Rick Prime didn't take rejection well. He dropped a bomb through a portal into Rick's garage, killing both Diane and young Beth instantly, destroying their home and Rick's entire world in the moment. That moment broke Rick completely. He spent the next several decades on a murder spree across the multiverse, hunting down and killing various Ricks, trying to find the one who murdered his family. He became the smartest, most dangerous man in the universe, all in pursuit of revenge. But he never found Rick Prime. Eventually, exhausted and defeated, Rick helped found the Citadel of Ricks and decided on a different strategy. He tracked down the dimension Rick Prime came from, the Prime Dimension, and discovered that Rick Prime had abandoned his own family. So Rick C-137 inserted himself into that family's life, giving them the relief of having Rick back while waiting for Rick Prime to return so he could finally kill him. That's how Rick ended up with our Morty, our Beth, and our Summer. They're not his original family. His original family is dead, but they became his second chance. As revealed in the Solo Ricks, Rick's grief was so consuming that he created an AI version of Diane at his old house in Dimension C-137 to hunt him. This AI constantly reminded him of his failure to save her and urged him to keep seeking revenge. When Rick accidentally gets reset to his own dimension, he encounters with Diane AI again and tells her it's time to move on. He has a new family now, but the AI correctly predicts that Rick Prime has also been reset, nearly restarting Rick's entire revenge quest. Then in Amortrican, we learn the full horrifying scope of what Rick Prime did. After killing Rick C-137's Diane, he repeated the process on other Dianes whose Rick also rejected his offer. Eventually, he used something called the Omega device to kill Diane in every universe across infinity. Every single version of her gone. He even built a trap with a killbot wearing Diane's face to torture the Ricks hunting him. Okay, Rick Prime needs to chill. Rick C-137 finally tracks down Rick Prime and brutally kills him, avenging Diane after decades of searching. But it doesn't bring her back. Nothing can. The Omega device made sure of that. Look, Diane's not just Rick's greatest love, she's his entire motivation. She's why he became who he is. She's the tragedy that shaped him into the smartest, most self-destructive man in the multiverse. Every relationship Rick has after her is doomed because he's still in love with a dead woman who can never come back. Unity came close, Gaia tried, Bagan hoped, but none of them could compete with the ghost of Diane Sanchez, the woman Rick loves so much that her death sent him on a multi-decade murder spree across infinite realities. So let's be honest here, she is easily S tier, like without a doubt, and in my opinion, she's more than just a love interest. Well, that's all for today's video guys. Comment down below which love interest is your favorite. We'd love to see it. Click here to watch some more Rick and Morty video, subscribe,